This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And welcome, everyone, to May the 15th. Halfway through the month, the Yankees seem hot. This is the Start Spreading the News show. Dr. Paul Semendinger, along with my dear and good friend, Dr. E.J. Fagan. Doctor, it's been, I don't know, probably
3 weeks, I think. Yeah,
since we've been together. How you been?
You know, I've been doing great. One of the reasons why I wasn't on the show the last few weeks is the New Jersey Devils were going deep into the playoffs, at least deeper than they've gone in a long time. But they were eliminated against the Carolina Hurricanes. They beat the evil New York Rangers. So Anthony Volpe and I, we got to be very happy. Maybe the rest of everybody watching the show got to be very sad. And now they are out. But it was a fun season to be a New Jersey Devils fan. First fun season in a long time, and I'm excited to watch this team over the next 10 years.
Yeah, Brian Cashman's a big Devils fan.
I didn't know that. Really? Oh,
yes.
Well, the Devils. When I was growing up with the Devils and the Yankees at the same time being the best teams in the world. The Devils won the Stanley Cup in 95, 2000, and 2003. And the Yankees also lost the World Series basically 3 months after the Devils lost the 2001 Stanley Cup, both in, Game 7, big, it was a tough time to be teenage me, but unlike the Yankees, the Devils went through this last decade of just being awful. They had 10 years of being basically the second or third worst team in the NHL consistently. They went through multiple rebuilds and nothing really came of it. They made big trades. They traded for an MVP award winner. They tried to go out there and win games. And one thing that I really appreciate watching the Yankees is that we haven't had to watch that phase, because that phase is tough. That phase sucks. And I'm just thankful that the Yankees, they had a 2 or 3 year period where they weren't great, but they were still winning games. They were still in it. And then we got a quick reload. And I think this Yankees team feels like it's going to continue winning. I was a little concerned for a little bit, but I think we're still in the good times.
Interesting. Because today, EJ, you are a college professor. Your semester is now over. Have all your grades been submitted?
All of my grades have been submitted, except for my grades on the New York Yankees.
Right, because you thought you were done with your grading, but nope. The administration of your college reached out to me and they said you still had some unfulfilled grade reports that had to be completed. I'm not sure what your online portal is. At Ramapo College, we use a thing called Canvas.
We use Blackboard, which is much worse than Canvas.
Yes, Blackboard. I've used Blackboard. So I know all about Blackboard. All right. So anyway, you got to log into Blackboard. Now you're in, and it's time to assign grades to a bunch of Yankees. I have 20 different names, 10 position players, 10 pitchers. Some of these guys, maybe at the bottom end of the pitching part, you might say incomplete. I think the rest of them all should get a full grade. I don't think we have any incompletes. Maybe there's one or two, but we'll see. You're the grader, so you get to decide what grade these players get. You ready?
All right, let's go.
All right. First base, Anthony Rizzo.
Anthony Rizzo gets an A+. Right now, I think he's the second or third first baseman by wins above replacement on Fangraphs. He just signed the extension, but even with that, I think he's a huge bargain. If you compare him to Paul Goldschmidt, you compare him to Freddie Freeman, the Yankees just lucked out, and the shift going away really has helped him. He's hit home runs. He's still making contact. He's as good as you could ever ask for. So easy A+ there.
I would have to tend to agree with you. I believe the other day on the game, they said that Anthony Rizzo has a higher batting average against left-handed pitching than anybody else in baseball or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy like 360 or something. Yeah, he's killing it.
Against lefties, too. It doesn't make any sense. But
it hasn't been an easy time to be a Yankee hitter. There were periods long periods in the beginning of the season where Anthony Rizzo was the only guy at the top of the lineup. He had no protection. He was the reason why the Yankees stayed in a lot of those games. And now you have a healthier lineup. Now he gets to be kind of in the middle of a pretty effective top five. and it's paying off. I suspect Rizzo will at some point go into a slump, but I think he's probably going to have his best season in 3 or 4 years,
which would be great.
Yep.
So let me just ask you, and this is totally off the subject. Let's say, see, the Yankees really don't have anybody else. I was going to ask you a question of, let's say he has his best season in 3 or 4 years, 32 years old or whatever he is now. Odds are he's never going to repeat that. If somebody came to you like with a Brian Reynolds trade with the Pirates, not that they would, but that kind of thing, like you can get appreciably better at a different position by trading Anthony Rizzo after his best year. Do you do it?
I mean, I think you're right in saying that there's not really an alternative at the moment. You think about who would play that position. It'd probably be LeMahieu, or you'd bring up like a Andres Chaparro or something like that. And whatever it is, you're going to be worse at first base. If this was a team that went in a different trajectory, if the last couple of weeks hadn't been better and the Yankees were, sinking below 500 and watching the rest of the AL East take off, I think then Rizzo, maybe is a guy you trade, not necessarily for a Brian Reynolds type, but for prospects, right? I mean, that's a classic trade right there. Really effective, could make a team better right now. There's a lot of playoff teams would love a guy like Anthony Rizzo. You trade him, but I don't think you have to anymore. I don't think that's really a concern. And, I think that he's almost on the perfect contract. He's under control for a couple more years, and that's it. Right? You don't have to worry about Rizzo deep into his 30s, deep into his decline years. It looks like he's going to be pretty effective, at least for this year, next year, and we'll see about the year after.
I have to agree. All right. Gleyber Torres. This is a tougher one.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, there's like a question of process and a question of results. Results, it's a B, right? I think Gleyber Torres is basically matching his career norms for results. I think his WRC plus is about 120, so 20% better than league average. It's basically what he's been at almost every season except for one of his really bad seasons. He started off the season really hot, but that was just early season stuff, small sample sizes. What's interesting is how he's gotten there. He is a different player than he's been at other points throughout his season. Torres has been a guy who's really reinvented himself several times throughout his young career already. He's only 26. I think this is probably the third version of Gleyber Torres that we've seen. We saw 38 home run Gleyber Torres, right? Gleyber Torres really took advantage of the juice ball. We saw what I would say like frustrating Gleyber Torres, still roughly the same WRC plus kind of player, but was hitting for some power, striking out, going on some streaks. And this Gleyber Torres is like strike zone control guy. He's got one of the best strikeout rates in the league. He's walking more than he's striking out, but he's not hitting for a ton of power. I think StatCast thinks he's been a little bit unlucky with the batted balls, that his WOBA should be a little bit higher, which would mean that this is kind of better than any version of Gleyber Torres that we've seen. And I kind of buy that. I think that, this is a B, but I would not be shocked if we did this again in a month and I give him an A, because his results kind of catch up to what it seems like he's performing, minus all that luck. So really love Gleyber Torres. Honestly, I think yesterday's game, Oswaldo Cabrera playing second, I miss Torres out there. There were some plays I think Torres makes that Cabrera kind of just bungled. Hasn't played a lot of second recently. Looked really good at third, but Cabrera's looking a little shaky in the middle of the infield. And I think Torres makes those plays, and that tells you, I think, something else about him. So pretty good. I'm pretty happy with Gleyber Torres right now, and I think there's a chance that he has his best season as a Yankee.
This would be beautiful. How about DJ?
That's another one I'm going to give a B+ to. LeMahieu is another guy, again, a weird season in terms of process. The overall numbers are good. 376, 347, 455. He's hitting the ball with authority again. Last season, even when he was going well, he had turned into this kind of like high on base, low power guy. And I don't know, I just didn't believe it, right? Like it was because of an injury. LeMahieu is a guy who can drive the ball when he's being effective. Now, if you look at him, he is transformed into like a high strikeout guy with some power and some walks. And I don't think that that's DJ LeMahieu. Like, I don't know why he's striking out at 27% on the season. That's basically double anything he's ever done before. And I have every bit of faith that that's going to come back down. The fact that he's hitting the ball hard is great. And if he keeps hitting the ball hard and the batting average goes back up, as the strikeout rate comes down, I mean, then we could be seeing, he's already batting 276. I think you could see a 300 plus DJ LeMahieu. He's been a little bit lucky as far as batted balls go right now. But Statcast doesn't think super lucky. He's got a 356 BABIP. That's a lot of batted balls going through, but Statcast think that's pretty accurate. Thinks that he's just made a lot of really solid contact. I think if I'm looking at these, if I'm making a prediction, Gleyber Torres, I think, has gotten unlucky. I think LeMahieu has just been striking out a lot, which is not unlucky. That's his fault. I think he's going to improve a lot. So I think I'm going to give him a B, but another guy that when we check in next, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a solid A, because there's a real chance for an MVP level LeMahieu performance coming up.
And of course, LeMahieu fills in a lot of gaps by being able to play a bunch of different positions. And he's a good clubhouse guy. You know, he's just a solid baseball player.
I'll tell you, the one thing that kills me, and this is a baseball thing, and I hate it, is that LeMahieu is the one guy that whenever the camera's on him in the dugout, he's putting chewing tobacco in. And I just, I hate chewing tobacco. If my friends used to use it when I was in high school, it's disgusting. I hated it. So that's my one problem with LeMahieu, is that I've seen about 10 shots of him this season, putting dip in his lip, and ugh.
I haven't seen it at all. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, now that I've mentioned it, you won't be able to unsee it, but
that's correct.
It's a bit of a pain.
All right, here's an interesting one. Yes, I mean, in this day and age, tobacco, chewing tobacco, etc. Bubble gum does the same thing, I would assume. Gives you something to chew on.
I think it's still strange that in convenience stores they sell to kids bubble gum that is cut up in the shape of chewing tobacco. But it's so weird.
I don't even think kids make that connection anymore.
No, they don't. I didn't make that connection until like 5 years ago. Like, I had Big League Chew as a kid, and I just thought it was bubble gum, right?
Yeah, just shredded bubble gum. I don't think kids make that connection. Oswaldo Cabrera. This is a real interesting one. I'm interested in your take on this, because you could give him a million different grades on the season so far.
I think he's a D. Cabrera, I had pretty high hopes coming into the season for Cabrera. I was really happy with him last year, and then in spring training, he looked like and continues to look like a pretty good defender. That's why he doesn't get an F. I think Cabrera is an outfielder, and I'm pretty happy with him as an outfielder. The problem is his bat. It's come on a little bit lately, but if you look at the Statcast numbers, he is bottom 5% of the league in expected weighted on base percentage. He strikes out a lot, and it's just obvious watching him. Like, he swings at a lot of pitches he shouldn't swing at. He's got this kind of guess swing. Andy Singer loves to mention that he's got this kind of swing that's designed to go after breaking pitches and sinkers. And I get it, and you could see it when he swings. It's got this huge uppercut of a swing, but most major league pitchers can throw a high fastball, and he's getting killed by them. Again, a little encouraged a little bit more lately, but the Statcast numbers suggest that if anything, he's been getting a little bit lucky with batted ball luck. That is, his actual inputs have been pretty bad. I'm not sure Oswaldo Cabrera is a long-term full-time player. That said, he's playing all over the field. I mentioned he didn't look great at second. I think it's no accident that he's barely played any second this year. I think he's looked really slick at third, a little bit at short when he was there, and great in the outfield. But I think I am increasingly convinced that he's a bench player. The one thing that I think is encouraging is his strikeout rate. He has a 19% strikeout rate, which, like, the version of Oswaldo Cabrera that is good is one that, doesn't strike out that much. He hits the ball pretty hard. He has power. He has hit home runs in the minor leagues. Doesn't take a lot of walks, but if he could, strike out a more, better than average, then he could hit a, 270 with a 300 on base percentage and some power. And to me, that's a good bench player. I think he's been overexposed in the outfield, and the only reason why he keeps getting playing time is because the other options are worse.
All right, that's interesting. Now, here's my favorite one. Harrison Bader.
A+, God, he's been great. I'll tell you something. I think Harrison Bader. I think if the Yankees have a very good season, and you write up the story of the season, I think the turning point in the regular season is the day that Harrison Bader gets back. He has been a fantastic defensive center fielder. I think replacing Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in center field with Harrison Bader is one of the biggest improvements that you could make on a team by switching out one player. I think the only bigger one would be Aaron Hicks and Aaron Judge. He's been fun to watch. He has been hitting for power. He has been legging out triples. It's a contract year for Bader, and I think it shows. And I think Bader wants to stay in New York, and he's making a case for it. The injury sucks. He's going to get injured again. Like, that's just kind of who Harrison Bader is, and you see why. He plays the game hard. When Isaiah Kiner-Falefa like tackled him trying to catch a ball in like his second ever game in left field or wherever it was, I got nervous, right? I was convinced that Bader was gone, right? Like Bader, I thought he dislocated his shoulder or something and he'd be out for 6 months, but he came back and has been as good as anyone on the team.
All right, so let's play a quick Bader game. First off, I've been the anti-Bader guy. It's funny, Andy Singer and I, when we write about Harrison Bader, I know everybody disagrees with me, but I'm still against the trade. And then Andy writes, he goes, I know everybody disagrees with me, but I'm in favor of that trade. We both have the opposite impression that everybody thinks differently than us on this. I think I'm definitely in the minority now. But when he first came back and he started hitting the ball and he was going crazy in his first 31 at-bats, he hit 429. And, let's keep it in perspective. It was 31 at-bats. Over his last 14, keeping it into perspective, it's only half of what he had before. He's hitting 142.
The overall numbers are strong. And
333. Of course, I'm just kidding. I'm just making a joke.
Here's the thing about Harrison Bader is that it's the defense is the first thing you look at. And I think he's looked great on defense. The speed hasn't translated a ton into base running, but he is very, very fast.
No, he beat out a couple balls on the infield.
He doesn't he's not going to steal 50 bases. I thought, with the new rules that a player like Bader who doesn't have the best kind of base running instincts, but is fast would really benefit from them. And I think you'd rather be a Volpe than a Bader basically. And it's still in today's base running environment. But Bader doesn't have to be a great hitter to be a very, very effective baseball player. And go for it.
Oh, let's just play a little game here. Let's say Bader plays this well for a month, right? Absent those last 14 at-bats. I just wanted to throw that in because I think it's funny. Because when he had his first 14 at-bats and he was like 14 for 14, it was like, see. But when people want to make their point, they want to make their point and then like forgetting about small sample sizes or whatever. But let's say he plays for another month. He's this good for the whole month. June 15th, he's out. He's out until July 15th. He's that great again from July 15th to August 15th. Yeah. And then he's out again another month. And then he's just average for the last 2 weeks and he does well in the playoffs or whatever. Like he really is super when he's there, but when he's not there, it's like he's not there for months on end. What do you do if that's his season now that he's a free agent?
I get a better backup center fielder than Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I think what you're explaining is exactly what you should expect with Harrison Bader, given his track record. He is a guy who he gets injured a lot, and therefore you need to plan for him to get injured.
I agree.
And the Yankees didn't. The Yankees went into the season with 2 outfielders. And to me, that's the sin here. I think Bader, you judge him by the WAR number at the end of the year. Right. At the end of the year, if he's worth 4 or 5 wins, well, I don't care that he only played 90 games to get there. If the Yankees had a good backup, they could, improve on 4 or 5 wins. The problem is when you're putting negative players out there every time somebody has to miss a little bit of time, or even if nobody has to miss any time in the case of left field, that it's just really damaging. Someone just hit a home run. It was Aaron Judge. There we go. Aaron Judge hit another home run. I think he's getting a grade soon, but I think Harrison Bader at the end, we're going to look up at the end of the year and he's going to be he's going to have a full-time level of production, even if not full playing time.
I've said this, and tell me if you agree with this analogy. The Yankees have built this team with a lot of fragile players. DJ's been fragile. Josh Donaldson's fragile. Giancarlo Stanton's fragile.
Donaldson's just not good, but yeah.
Well, but Severino's fragile. Tommy Kahnle's fragile. Frankie Montas is fragile. Harrison Bader's fragile. A lot of guys who've broken down a lot, especially Clay Holmes, Michael King. I mean, on and on. Guys who've had significant injuries. And except when they're fluky, guys who tend to get injured a lot. And so the Yankees act like they're surprised when these guys get injured. But it's like if you eat fine china every night, Well, some of that's going to break. You're eating on very, fancy plates. You can't be surprised. So, right, if you're going to have Harrison Bader, if you're going to re-sign him, you have to have somebody who's pretty good to play center field when he's not there. And I don't believe that means, well, you just move Judge over, because then you have to have somebody pretty good to play right field. You have to have some good backups, because if you just say, well, Judge will do it, then you're just moving the good player from position A to position B. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's not really making the team any better. It's just, you're still in the same problem. It's just the problem's not center, it's right.
If you want to play on fine china, right, you got to have some paper plates.
Yes.
Waiting.
That are good quality ones that aren't going to let the
to me, that's the sin of the Yankees. Like the Yankees they have pursued players who are cheaper than their ceiling because they're trying to save some money. They're trying to stretch their budget a little bit farther. And the net result is a very large budget, but a lot of guys who kind of are discounted. LeMahieu is only getting paid $16 a year, right? Hicks is only getting paid $10 a year, and we can go down the list. And that has resulted in a lot of players that are more variable than a lot of star players in other teams, right? The other model would be the Dodgers, right? Who get Freeman and Mookie Betts, and they pay Clayton Kershaw, and they pay Max Muncy, and then they fill in their roster with 20 other players. And Julio Urias, you can go down the list there. And that works out really well for the Dodgers, at least it has up until this season. The Yankees, they went and got Garrett Cole. They paid Aaron Judge. And basically the rest of the roster are either rookies, who that you wish they had more of previously, because that would make this kind of work. The other way to do this is to have a bunch of guys who are getting paid the league minimum, but are performing really well. Or players that they got on the cheap for some reason. It could be a trade. It could be a Jake Bauer situation. Whatever. Right? We all know the story there. And the result has been that you end up with a very difficult to predict roster. If I were doing that, if I knew that was going to be my situation, I would start the season with more flexibility on the bench. I would start the season with 5 outfielders, not 2. And the Yankees just didn't. Like they were just okay not having those backups, and then on top of that, the worst case scenario happened, where Judge and Bader, and we can go down the list of people, all got hurt at the same time. And the Yankees paid for it. They paid for it by not having the depth. They traded away a lot of pitching depth last year. Now, I should note, basically none of the players they trade away are doing well. The Cubs just optioned down Hayden Wesneski, who looked like the best player the Yankees had traded away, but he had a bad month. Basically, all of the A's are doing badly, so you're not really missing J.P. Sears and Ken Waldichuk and all those guys. But still, the Yankees traded away a lot of depth, and then they had 4 starters get injured, or 3 starters get injured. And Nestor Cortez having some what appears to be physical problems. And they just didn't have anyone to replace all those players. If I were them, I would have gone out and signed someone to be my 7th starter when I knew that I didn't have one. You think about the bullpen. The Yankees have kind of hacked together an okay bullpen. It's struggled a little bit in the most recent weeks, but on the whole, the season's been pretty good. But they could have gone out and gotten David Robertson or something, right? David Robertson has a 0 ERA or whatever for the Mets, and has been one of the few bright spots on that team. I don't like this bargain bin strategy when you don't realize you're playing it. You're doing the bargain bin. And to me, that's the classic problem of the Yankees right now.
I agree 100%. So give Aaron Judge a grade.
Aaron Judge, I'm going to give an A-. He had 2 home runs today. His OPS is now his slugging's almost up to 600. His OPS is now back to his average career, which is really good. For a little bit, he was slumping. He got injured, and his strikeout rate has been back elevated well above 30%. In other words, he is basically doing career Aaron Judge right now. I mean, almost exactly.
And career Aaron Judge is a pretty good ball player.
Pretty good ball player, but not $40 million ball player. Right? Career Aaron Judge was given a fair offer of $220 million before last season, and then he had last season. And I don't think anyone expected him to repeat that season, but I think somewhere in between career Aaron Judge and last season is a reasonable expectation, and is what you're paying for in that contract. You're not paying for the past, you're paying for the future. And Judge made you think that he could be really good again. And then, he starts doing things like working on a 2-strike approach in spring training and all that kind of stuff. Plus the injury. It wasn't his fault, right? He slid into third, good hard play. Probably could have played in a few days, but they gave him a little bit longer off because of the big contract. You don't want a player blowing his hip out at the beginning of a 10-year contract. So I think Aaron Judge needs to be a little bit better if this team is going to win a World Series. I don't, we can talk about catching the Rays or whatever, but this is a team that was built to be a pitching and defense team that also had Aaron Judge. And right now they're a team without great pitching, with so-so defense, with good defense, and does not have an MVP level hitter in the middle of its lineup.
Though he's getting there the last few days.
I mean, he almost had another home run yesterday, right? I mean, it was a strong gust of wind away from winning that game or tying that game against the Rays. And 2 home runs today. I think he's getting hot. I think there's a chance that he goes on a roll and is incredible for the next few months. I mean, if you look at his numbers last season in April, they were better than this, but they weren't otherworldly. He turned it on around this time last year and then kept it on for the remainder of the season. Giancarlo Stanton was the hottest Yankee to begin the season. So I'm again, A-, right? A- is a good grade. Good student guy in A-, shouldn't complain. They did very well in the class, but they could still do better.
The other Aaron
Hicks. That's an F.
There you go.
Aaron Hicks has been, for the last calendar year, the worst hitter in the major leagues. He has slowed down a lot, right? His sprint speed is looking like Giancarlo Stanton levels of sprint speed. He can't really play good center field anymore. I was surprised that he was injured for 5 days and they didn't IL him. If I were the Yankees, I IL him. I say take 2 weeks off, take a 30-day rehab assignment, do what they're doing with Josh Donaldson. I think Aaron Hicks is getting DFA'd soon. He clearly doesn't have a spot in this team. He's gotten a couple of hits recently, but I don't think that changes anything. He's not hitting well for much power. He's not even taking a ton of walks like he did last year. There is no redeeming quality for Aaron Hicks right now. And I'd rather have Estevan Florial, who's killing it at AAA, or Andres Chapera, who's killing it at AAA, on this team over Aaron Hicks. I think the reason why they haven't done it is because they're afraid of losing outfield depth, right? They were afraid of getting into a spot where they ran out of outfielders again, which they almost did. But Jake Bauers has now emerged, and he's been playing very well. Again, they've got some guys at AAA who have been playing pretty well. Jason Dominguez is having a fascinating season, and I think looking like a major league player right now. I don't see where Aaron Hicks's role is on this team. And I don't think the Yankees do either. I mean, they started him today because there was a tough righty in the mound. They wanted to sit some guys, but that does not seem like a major league roster spot. No one's ever going to take that contract. So it's just a pure sunk cost. I don't think anyone thinks that Estevan Florial is worse than this. I don't think if you sent Aaron Hicks down to AAA that he hit 300. He doesn't seem like a good locker room guy. So
he seems to be moping. He's
a mope. And look, I get it, right? Like if you used to be a great Major League Baseball player, a good Major League Baseball player. If you look at some of Aaron Hicks's stats back kind of during his peak, he was a great defensive player, really underrated offensive player, fast. He was a good player. And over the last couple of seasons, and particularly the last year, since that wrist injury, he has lost all power. He has been given plenty of playing time. He was playing every day for long periods during this season and last season, and he just lost the job. And again, I get it. I get how you would be disappointed by that, and I get that you would kind of be confused about what you're doing on a team, and that the only reason why you have a job is because you have a long-term contract. But that contract is getting paid out no matter what. And so, short of Aaron Hicks getting suspended for steroids, which isn't probably not going to happen, I think he is. I think the Yankees are going to cut him soon as they can feel safe in their outfield depth.
the stupidest statistic this year that people were making a big deal of was that Anthony Volpe was the first Yankee in the history of forever or something, but I think beat Joe DiMaggio's record. He is 13 for 13 in stolen bases. Now that's great, but they made the bases better.
Career records. It's not a fun record.
But they made the bases bigger. The pitchers aren't allowed to throw over. I mean,
DiMaggio didn't have to play against black players. Like I think there's a case to be made that what Volpe is doing is very impressive.
What he's doing, and I think we're both going to give him an A. And I want to.
I'm not going to give him an A.
Oh, interesting. No. But you cannot compare stolen base records in 2023 with the past. It's because it's a different game. It's like saying Wilt Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal has hit more 3 points than Wilt Chamberlain. I don't think there was a 3-point line when Wilt Chamberlain played. Like, okay, he did. Yep, good for him. Doesn't mean anything.
I mean, here is how I would contextualize it. So Fangraphs has a stat called base running runs, which is basically how much do you contribute in stolen bases, taking the extra base, not getting thrown out, that kind of stuff. Volpe leads the majors. He has a credible case to being the best base runner in the majors. And
well, that I'll buy. I just don't like this 13 for 13.
I just don't. I mean, I don't care. Like those are just stats. Yeah, it's interesting, right?
I don't even think it's interesting.
I like that he's not getting. I like that he's not getting caught. I think that tells you something about his performance. Everyone knows he's going now, and yet he does the little hop thing, which I'm sure if you caught him right, you could catch him on. Volpe has figured out the stolen base rules, and I think the first week or two of the major leagues, we saw a lot of stolen bases. That's really slowed down a lot. I'm going to run the numbers for a blog post at some point soon. But it feels like a lot, some players are trying to exploit these new rules, and a lot of others have just kind of stopped. They've kind of just gone back to, lazy is not really the word, but conserving their energy on the bases a little bit. But Volpe hasn't, right? Volpe gets on base and he looks to steal. He had that at bat where he walked and then stole second and third the other night. That was impressive as hell. And that's the kind of that's a player that I think works. I like that he's down the lineup because that's where singles are really useful.
Thank you. I want to get to that too. But what grade are you going to give him?
I'm going to give him an A-.
I said an A.
In fact, I'm tempted to give him a B+.
Oh my goodness.
Volpe his defense has been good, well above average, which is great for a shortstop. His offense has been slightly below average for a major league player and fairly average for a shortstop. He is striking out a lot, 29%. He's hitting for power, which is nice, but early in the season, he was taking a lot of walks. He was basically just taking pitches. And I think pitchers adjusted to him, and they stopped throwing him so many strikes. I mean, it was that simple, right? His rate of being thrown strikes increased tremendously. And that, I think, has actually really slowed down his offensive game a lot. He was really relying on those walks. With a 29% strikeout rate, he's not a guy who's going to hit 30 home runs, even if he's hitting a decent number of home runs. Volpe needs to hit. He needs to get hits. He needs to not strike out. He needs to he needs to be a high batting average guy. And that's just not the Volpe that we've seen so far. He's batting .218, and that's pretty much what you would expect on the StatCast numbers.
He's never been a high batting average guy, though.
I mean, in the minors, he had an 18% walk rate in AA. He had a 17% walk rate in low A.
He's like a 265 minor league hitter.
Yeah, but I mean, he has put up higher batting. He has hit 300 in the minors.
I think once.
And he has put up strikeout rates that would suggest a higher batting average in the minors. I don't think Anthony Volpe will be a great major league player. He might be a good major league player, but not a great major league player with a 29% strikeout rate. In fact, I think he's a marginal major league player with a 29% strikeout rate because his walk rate is going to come down over time. He did walk a lot in the minors, especially the low minors, but he's not going to walk at 11% with pitchers throwing him so many strikes. I think he's a major league player. I think he's proven that he is here, that the Yankees will have a shortstop of the future. And the question now is, do they have a star shortstop? Do they have a shortstop who, while he's still young and fast, will elevate himself with base running? or do they have JJ Hardy type or someone, just a name that comes to mind, right? Someone like that will help them win a lot of games, but will ultimately be closer to kind of like a Gleyber Torres than to a Derek Jeter.
Interesting.
See, that's fine. Like if a prospect turns into a Gleyber Torres type, like above average major league player, you should be very happy with that prospect. But I think the Yankees need Volpe, and I think he has the potential to be a star player, a player like Aaron Judge. And I just don't think we've seen that yet, though it's, the early returns are still promising.
Correct. See, I'd grade him on a curve because he's a rookie.
We don't curve in my class. We don't. I
don't curve in my class either. But my point is, I think he gets a couple of bonus points because he's a rookie, and I believe the Yankees.
To me, I'm grading him based on expectations, right?
All right. My expectations were very low. I think the Yankees did a bad job with Anthony Volpe, and again, I think it goes down to planning. They didn't plan a team that had a quality leadoff hitter. They were struggling. Guys were hurt. They sound like we don't have anybody else. I don't think in anybody's plan did they say within his first 20 major league games, you're going to make Anthony Volpe the leadoff hitter on a team that we think is going to go to the World Series. I think that was negligent. I think it was bad. I think it was bad process, whatever you want to say. And they should have just left him at the bottom of the order and said, get used to the big leagues. They put him up and he wasn't hitting. And he got progressively worse.
I mean, he was good for the first couple of weeks that he was in leadoff, and then there was the adjustment that came back at him.
Because he's a player who's learning. So it's not the thing to do to take your rookie who barely made the team. Nobody thought he was going to make the team, and then say, oh, by the way, now you're our leadoff hitter. It's just like that's the process, the decisions that we can disagree on that, but I think the Yankees did a terrible job there, and I'm glad they moved him down. You said that before. I agree with that, and I think
I'll tell you why I like him down. To me, I never really buy into the rookie pressure kind of stuff.
I don't think it's real.
I think I'd rather have Volpe in the bottom of the lineup because you don't need a stolen base guy in front of Aaron Judge. You need an on base guy, and if he's going to get on base at 38% of the time, sure. But Anthony Volpe is really a fun base runner, and you want him in front of guys who hit singles. Jose Trevino is an interesting player to have behind Volpe because Trevino is not a great hitter, but he's a contact hitter, so you can hit and run with him. I never understood, and this is a long time criticism of. Oh, the Yankees are giving up some runs right now. This is a long time criticism of. From Moneyball and from Sabermetrics, and that this idea that a fast stolen base guy.
I understand that. That's my generation and before. Right. I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, like Ricky Henderson should be leading off because Ricky Henderson's one of the best batters in the world. But a guy like Volpe, who is right now,
I'll give you the name. Vince Coleman was not
right. Yeah, 130 stolen bases and a 280 on base percentage. Right. To me, that's a player you want in front of your singles hitters. Not a player that you want in front of your power hitters. And Volpe right now, his value is coming out of defense and base running, which means that he's just more, he can use that defense and base running more when you have a singles hitter behind him.
I believe, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I also believe that there is a thing called pressure, and the major leagues getting there and succeeding there is huge. I'm reading this interesting book to go off topic. It's called Baseball's Endangered Species, and it's detailed like you wouldn't believe. It's a story really about the history of scouting by looking at a series of different scouts over the years, dating back to when Branch Rickey first came up with the idea. So you're talking about like 100-year history of the history of scouting while looking at specific scouts. But one of the things that comes out when you read the book is and we know this already, but throughout baseball history, there are these players who were can't miss, who every single baseball expert looked at these guys and they said, this guy has every possible tool. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's athletic. He's smart. He can hit for average. He can hit for power. He's a can't miss prospect. And so many of them end up missing. And when it gets into the nitty gritty about some of these players, it's as simple as, and these are guys that have succeeded everywhere. Nothing really different than Anthony Volpe. And they say, why didn't he make it? I lost my confidence. It just
went
away.
Say.
Well, This is what the book basically talks about, though. But here's a guy. There was no reason to lose your confidence. You have all the talent in the world. You get to the major leagues, it's different. And I believe, just like they're not making you, I don't know, the head of the department yet. You started
be careful, but yeah,
a year or two ago, right? You got to teach for a while, and then they go, all right. My first year teacher, I was a principal for 25 years, 24 years. They didn't make me a principal the first year I taught. So you got to learn.
But he's in the majors, right? Like, to me, these are professional athletes. They are as well prepared as any professional athletes have ever been. I don't think that the pressure differential between saying you're now the leadoff hitter to you're the number 6 hitter is all that much. And, Volpe is not a guy who I've ever thought struggled to handle pressure. He seems like he's done it well, and he hit really well in the leadoff spot. He hit better there than he did when he was batting 9th to start the season. I think what you saw is other normal rookie stuff, which is another reason why a lot of players don't succeed, in that the league adjusted back to him.
Right? And then you lose your confidence. And then
I don't think you lose your confidence. Sometimes you're just not good enough, right? Like, to me, there's a narrative about players who are really physically talented, and that physical talent is enough to kind of bring them through the major leagues. There was a hockey player. I wish I remembered his name, but he was a Canadian juniors player. And he, I believe, broke the record for scoring among Canadian juniors. And he was drafted first overall by, I believe, the Ottawa Senators. God, I wish I remembered his name. And he was a complete bust in the NHL. He never did anything.
Todd Van Poppel, who's another one, right? Everybody wanted to draft that guy. He was not a good pitcher.
Well, once we kind of did a retrospective, we said, okay, why was this guy scoring so much in juniors and not the NHL? Well, the answer was he was just so fast. He was blowing by guys. He was just running through guys in juniors and then scoring. And that just doesn't work in the NHL. In the NHL, there's lots of guys who are fast enough that he can't get behind them. And once he couldn't get behind the defenders, turns out he didn't have a shot, didn't have a good pass, and was a bad defender. And I think a lot of major league players are like that as prospects, or a lot of failed major league players like that as prospects. They have some tool that works against bad competition that doesn't work against major league players. I mean, Esteban Florial is a potential example of that. A guy who's really good at AAA, but probably, at least no one seems to think that he has the goods to compete in the major leagues. I think that happens a lot with prospects. You have a lot of prospects who can succeed at AA or AAA, but can't succeed in the majors. And I think what we've seen from Volpe is that Volpe has the skills to hang in the majors. That the toolkit that he has is good enough. He's clearly a shortstop. He's clearly a major league shortstop, better than I ever expected. He's clearly a major league base runner, one of the best in the league. And he's hitting enough, both for power and just taking walks and whatever, that he's clearly an effective major league player. He's better than most major league shortstops already. And the question will be for him is, can he make that adjustment back to the league where he gets back to going from a 93 WRC plus to being a well above average player? If Volpe is like Derek Jeter, 120, 130, WRC plus player, 20 or 30% better hitter than the league on average, with his defense and his base running, he's going to be a real star. We haven't seen it yet. And that's why he doesn't get an A, right? I mean, he has had a great start to his career, but I think he's got a lot of room to improve. This is not the best version of Anthony Volpe. I would have given him an A 3 weeks ago when he had a 380 on base percentage, but he doesn't anymore. And
he was batting leadoff, and he shouldn't have been there.
Oh, but he did that while batting leadoff, right? I mean, to me, like I think he was the 4th best hitter on the team at that point in time, right? The reason why he was put in the leadoff spot was not only because he was hot, but because the other option was Aaron Hicks, or whatever, right? There was no one else to go there.
Which is my point. They did it out of desperation because they had nobody else, because they didn't plan this well. The right plan would have been to take that player. We'll disagree on this, but keep him, acclimate to the major leagues, kiddo. Stay at the bottom. Greg Jeffries, there was not a player more hyped, who had more ability. He could do everything. I think he was a switch hitter. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. The Mets had the greatest player of all time. He didn't make it. And part of that has to be that the league caught up to him, and but part of that could be that he was rushed, that the team maybe didn't bring him up the right way. I mean, I don't know the facts about Craig Jeffries, but the history of baseball is littered with these guys. And then we go, oh yeah, well, it didn't work out. I don't, with a guy like Anthony Volpe, I don't want to go at the end. Well, it just didn't work out. Well, maybe we rushed him. Maybe we shouldn't have. But bat him ninth, leave him there all year, let him acclimate to the major leagues, and then we can talk about him being a leadoff hitter or a number 2 hitter or a number 7 hitter or whatever. But it's his first month and a half of the big leagues. He shouldn't be moving them around. You should just let him acclimate.
I don't like babying players, right?
Like, I don't think that's babying.
I think you're either in the majors or you're not. And you know, I think you treat someone like that at AAA, but the moment you say, you know, I think you're good enough to be a major league player, I think that's it, right? I think you just have to treat them like that, or else you're doing development in the majors, not in the farm. I don't know. Like I think Anthony Volpe handled it fine. I don't think there's any reason to attribute his struggles to being at leadoff. And the reason why he got demoted is because the Yankees now have better players back who should bat there. You know, I think Anthony Volpe is probably going to be in the leadoff spot at some point later this year, and you know, probably for the better.
And I would disagree. So we'll just move forward. Give Isaiah Kiner-Falefa a grade.
It's an F. You know, it's amazing. You're
saying Hicks was the worst hitter ever. It might be Kiner-Falefa. I don't know.
I mean, they're both pretty bad. I expected Kiner-Falefa to hit like he's always hit, which is like 20-ish% below league average. Hits for batting average, doesn't hit for power. We saw exactly his career numbers last year. He's turned into a pretty solid outfielder, I think. You know, the Statcast numbers like him a lot. He's got a great outfield jump. He's fast enough. You know, he's been an above average player there, and I think really proven that he should be an outfielder, or rather that he should be a bench player who plays the outfield. And if he were hitting like his career norms as a bench player, I think he'd be fine. But he's been playing a lot, more than you want him to because of the injuries. And he has been far worse than his career average. Now, if you look at the Statcast numbers, they heavily suggest that this is a luck problem. His ex-WOBA is basically at his career, and his WOBA is well below it. But for a player that hits for such little power, has no ability to drive the ball, like you just know that he's going to go through long slumps where like a lot of ground balls get caught. I like him. I think he's a fine bench player, but I think he should be a bench player that doesn't play a lot. It's been really tough to watch. I want to get back to a world where Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is the guy who bunts or, you know, bats, you know, pinch hits with a guy on third and one out, and that's it. I don't want to see starting Isaiah Kiner-Falefa at all.
I hear you. Don't disagree. All right. We only have like 10 minutes left, 9 minutes left or so. So we're going to do this fast. You're just going to give these guys a grade now. We're going to go to the pitchers. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Cole.
A+.
I would have to drop him down a little bit. He hasn't looked as great the last 2 starts, but besides that, I agree. A+. Nestor.
C. I think Cortez is looking good at times, but he's having trouble getting deep into games. One thing I was concerned about early in the season is they look like he had gained weight. And it seems like there's an endurance problem with him. He also had the abbreviated spring training, which didn't help. Probably was pushed back a little bit quickly. You know, the expected Statcast numbers aren't as bad as the overall numbers. And, you know, at times he's looked pretty good. I'm surprised that he's not throwing the bag of tricks out there like he used to. And I think he needs to get back to that.
Agree. Clark Schmidt.
That's a D. You know, like there's been times where Clark Schmidt's looked effective, but then in the end of the game, he gave up 4 or 5 runs.
Every time out.
I'm not even confident that he's a good relief pitcher at this point, but I certainly don't think he's a starter. You look at what the Rays did and stack lefties against him. Every team that has the opportunity to do that is going to do that until he gets lefties out. And I don't have any confidence that he can. I think I'm surprised that Johnny Brito is lined up to leave when Severino leaves, because I think Brito at least looks like he has some talent. Frankly, I think Schmidt doesn't. I think Schmidt looks like he's not a major league player.
Johnny Brito.
A D, you know, again, Brito's a guy who seems like he's got some talent, but doesn't have a third pitch. And
sorry.
I mean, I think he's probably a relief pitcher, if anything. He's definitely been overexposed. I think the opener was an interesting tack today.
Mm-hmm.
I think he gave up some runs late while we've been talking here. Yeah, he gave up a couple of runs right there at the end.
Is the game over?
The game is not yet over, but the Yankees have some guys on base. I think Volpe just took a walk or something. But I don't want to see a lot of Brito going forward. I'm not. He's not a player I'm excited to see go down to AAA and figure things out.
Clay Holmes.
It's a tough one. A B, I guess. I mean, he is alternated between really good and really bad. You know, the ERA is worse than the expected numbers. I think recently, the last 4 or 5 outings, I think he's actually looked pretty dominant. I need to rerun and look at his numbers again. What I saw early in the season was that he had batters had continued a trend from late last season of just like not swinging. And they learned that he can't throw his best pitches for strikes. And so if they just sit there and don't swing, then he'll be forced to throw right down the middle and they can hit it. Mm-hmm. And I got to see if that trend has stopped. I think that if Clay Holmes can throw his best pitches for strikes, then he can take advantage of that killer pitch. But if that killer pitch just never hits the zone, he's going to walk a million guys. He's not going to be a closer. So I'd say B-. I'll give him a B-, right? Not great, but better than I was feeling a few weeks ago.
Michael King.
That's another tough one because he's been giving up some runs lately, but I'm going to give him an A-. He looks like Michael King out there. You know, they've had to baby him a little bit because of the injury. They're a little concerned about that injury. He just broke his elbow, so that's understandable. I'd like to see. I get that they like to use him in this multi-inning role, but I'd kind of like to see him in a short relief pitching situation.
Ron Marinaccio.
Another tough one because he's been giving up some runs lately, but I'm going to give him a B. I think he looks like a major league reliever. He's got an ERA, you know, in the 3s. That sounds about right. I feel like he could be a little better. I thought he might be a closer type, you know, mid-2s ERAs going into the season. And so far, he's been kind of hittable.
Ian Hamilton.
I'll give it an A. You know, great story,
right? Yeah,
he's looked great. Didn't look great today. He gave us some runs while we've been talking.
I'm not watching it. I'm talking to you.
But you know, look, for a guy who has been through as much as Ian Hamilton has, and who looks as scary as Ian Hamilton does.
Remember when the Yankees had all those giant guys, Shelley Duncan, and all this, like
Kyle Farnsworth, yeah.
Like Kyle Farnsworth. I saw something. I think it was real. Is doing like like a bodybuilding, like he's a Schwarzenegger type of thing guy now. Like he's like, so
yeah. Yes, and he's like in his 50s, or he's not.
Yeah,
young.
the Terminator, right? He's going to be the new. I don't know, but
yeah, he's training for Mr. Universe. He did a Sports Illustrated episode, and he looks insane.
He's
but like I think the Yankees needed to find someone like Ian Hamilton, and I think they did.
Last one, Wandy.
I'll give him an A-. You know, I think Wandy has been exposed, being treated like a normal closer, because I think he's just way, way better against lefties than righties. And you want to use Wandy in a spot where he can play against lefties. And the Yankees have needed him to do more. And I think that's kind of shown. He's also been pitching a lot. But I think he's been their best reliever. So give him an A.
Again, poor planning. He's the only lefty they have. I mean, I just don't understand some of these things. Like, the Yankees could be so much better if they had just like thought some of these things through a little better. But that being said, EJ, the Yankees right now, it's the top of the 9th, are up 7-4. Now, I know I'm the guy who doesn't believe in this team. I get it. I want to be proven wrong. I've said it all year. But if the Yankees win and they're up by 3 going into the bottom of the 9th or so, the Yankees will end up with 24 wins on the season. If that's the case, the Toronto Blue Jays have 24 wins on the season. So as bad as it's been, the Yankees will have tied the Toronto Blue Jays for wins. Now, granted, the Yankees have played a few more games, but I don't think anybody would have expected that quickly. So we did it, EJ. Another great hour of Yankee talk. I always appreciate your perspectives. I like it when we respectfully have different perspectives on the same thing. We'll find out who's right or who's wrong. Me, and I actually wrote an article about this the other day. Sometimes both people can be right. Like it can be some things aren't.
The world is uncertain.
Yeah, right. Like, and that's the fun of all this is we don't know. And we bring our perspectives and our thoughts in, and we say, like, this is what I think. And I think we bring our worries. I mean, I want Anthony Volpe to be great for the next 20 years. Like, let's not rush it. Let's not rush it. Like a fine wine, even though I'm not really understanding anything about wine because I'm not a big drinker, but like a fine wine, you can't rush it. What was the thing? We will sell no wine before it's time or something. That was an old commercial. But anyway, EJ, this has been a great hour. Great to have you back. And we'll be back here again next Monday at 9 p.m. Everybody, thanks for watching the Start Spreading the News podcast.